Hello, my friends. My name is Silas Crawford, and if you have a rusty hammer in a drawer, barn, garage, or old carpenter's chest, there's a good chance it is worth almost nothing. That is the truth, and it is exactly why this category fools people. 9 out of 10 old hammers I see are ordinary working tools worth somewhere between $500 and $200, often much less. But the rare exceptions can be a completely different animal. A hand-forged 18th century hammer with a maker's initials, an engraved presentation hammer, a bizarre patented model, an elite European trade hammer, or a tool with documented historical provenance can push into 4 figures when everything lines up. Today, I am showing you 5 rusty hammers I would normally leave behind and 5 categories that make me stop, turn the head over, and start looking for marks. The difference is not rust. It is era, trade, maker, patent, provenance, originality, and condition. Before we start, tell me what kind of hammer is sitting closest to you right now. A claw hammer, ball peen, tack hammer, blacksmith hammer, or something you cannot identify. And stay with me through the patented and historical examples, because that is where a tool that looks like a strange workshop leftover can suddenly become something worth specialist attention. Now, here's the principle I use before I ever think about price. Era comes first. Pre-1800 hand-forged tools sit at the top because production was limited and surviving signed examples are scarce. The American golden age of toolmaking runs roughly from 1840 through 1940, when named makers, specialized trades, and patented designs exploded. Later, machine-made hammers with grooved eyes are much more common and generally cheaper. Then I ask what trade the hammer served. A generic claw hammer is everywhere. A cooper's hammer, cobbler's hammer, saddler's hammer, silversmith's planishing hammer, carriage body hammer, or other highly specialized tool was made for a narrower job and can be far more interesting. Quick favor before we start separating junk from treasure. If you like learning how to identify old tools before somebody throws away the important one or overpays for the wrong one, subscribe to the channel. Every week, I break down makers, patents, trade-specific forms, dates, and the tiny clues that separate common garage tools from serious collectibles. And the next valuable one may already be hanging on your wall. Then I look for the maker. D. Maydole, Henry Cheney of Little Falls, New York, Old Plum with the Anchor logo, Stanley Sweetheart, and Keen Cutter are names that make me slow down. But a famous name does not magically turn a common late hammer into a $1,000 object. Most branded hammers still live in the tens or hundreds. Patents matter too. And if I see Pat D patented a date or a number, I write it down and cross it through Google Patents. An old patent can identify the inventor, the mechanism, and the era. Provenance is the multiplier that can change everything. A hammer tied by documentation to a famous maker, exhibition, shipyard, historical owner, commemorative event, or presentation ceremony can be worth more for its story than for the steel itself. Finally, I judge originality. Original hickory handle, legible marks, healthy face, untouched finish, and no repairs help. Sanding, repainting, rehandling, welding, or polishing can destroy collector value. Number 5 on the worth nothing side is the modern mass-produced claw hammer. Fiberglass handle, steel handle, molded grip, post-war construction, machine-made grooved eye, store brand stamp, or no maker at all. These are useful, but collectible interest is basically zero. Typical value is around $5 to $20. Little rust does not make one antique. A tool can spend 10 years behind a shed and look older than a century-old hammer kept in oil. If the head shape is ordinary, the eye is modern, the handle is synthetic, and there is no meaningful mark, I do not buy it to resell. Number 4 is the generic rusty ball peen hammer with no maker. You know the shape. Flat face on one side, rounded peen on the other, common in mechanics and machinists' boxes. Without a maker, patent, unusual size, specialty use, or early construction, these often sit around $5 to $15. Heavy rust can make them look dramatic, but drama is not rarity. I still check both cheeks, the top, and around the eye because a faint mark can hide under scale. If there is nothing there, it is usually a working tool, not a collector piece. Number 3 is the post-war branded hardware store hammer. in ordinary user condition. This is where people get confused because they recognize a name and assume value. You may find later Madol, Plum, Stanley, or similar branded hammers from after 1950 with a machine-made grooved eye, heavy use, and nothing unusual about the pattern. Authentic? Yes. Valuable? Usually not very. $30 to $80 is realistic territory for many common examples. The name helps, but the era and exact model matter more. I would rather have one rare early patent from an obscure maker than 10 common post-war hammers carrying famous stamps. Number 2 is any badly damaged or repaired hammer. Cracked or glued handle, replaced handle on a collector piece, mushroomed face, chipped face, welded repair, bent head, loose head, or a structural crack through the eye. For a user, some repairs may be acceptable. For a collector, they can kill the value. A rare hammer may still be worth something in damaged condition, but ordinary examples drop towards zero collector interest. Mushrooming is especially important because it shows the striking face has deformed from use. A chipped face is worse. Welds raise questions immediately. And a new handle on an otherwise early head removes part of the original object. Number 1 on the worth nothing side is the over-restored hammer. This one fools buyers because it looks beautiful. Bright polished head, fresh black paint, new hickory handle, shiny wedge, every trace of age sanded away. That may make a nice display or user tool, but it can destroy exactly what collectors wanted. Unlike cast iron cookware, where careful restoration can reveal a valuable surface, antique hammers often gain value from originality. Old finish, tool marks, patina, original handle wear, and even honest discoloration are evidence. If somebody sands the head until a shallow maker stamp disappears, repaints the steel, or replaces the handle before the tool is identified, the loss cannot be reversed. So if you remember one thing from the first half, remember this: do not restore first and research later. Now let us turn the table around and look at the categories that can reach serious money when the right example appears. Number 5 is the pre-1800 hand-forged hammer that is signed or dated. This is the top age category. I am looking for an irregular handmade eye instead of a perfectly machined one, asymmetry in the forging, primitive head forms that do not match later standardized claw or ball peen shapes, and especially initials, a blacksmith's signature or a date scratched or stamped into the head. The age alone is not enough. An anonymous rough hammer can still be modest, but a verifiable 18th century piece with maker identification or a clear date becomes historically specific. Common old hand-forged examples can stay in the hundreds. Exceptional signed or dated examples can reach 4 figures at specialist auction. That is the honest way to frame it. The thousands belong to the strongest examples. Not every primitive-looking hammer. If you found a crude hammer with an irregular eye and the date 1784 scratched into the cheek, would you trust it immediately? I would not. I would inspect whether the wear, corrosion, lettering, and construction agree with each other before I believe the story. Fresh numbers on old metal are one of the oldest tricks in the business. Number 4 is the silversmith, goldsmith, or presentation hammer. A true planishing hammer used by a silversmith may have refined, polished faces designed to smooth and shape metal without leaving ugly marks. Presentation examples can go much further with engraved inscriptions, silver or brass details, ceremonial decoration, commemorative wording, or ownership information. This is where material, craftsmanship, and story overlap. Ordinary silversmith hammers can remain in the hundreds. Engraved presentation pieces, precious metal examples, and historically important ceremonial hammers are the ones that can move into thousands. I inspect the engraving style, metal quality, maker, handle, and whether the inscription can be tied to a real event or person. A decorative hammer made yesterday is not a presentation antique. Provenance has to be earned. Before we go higher, one warning matters more than price. Fake maker marks exist. Sellers can stamp a generic hammer with a famous name to inflate value. A genuine old stamp should have wear and patina consistent with the surrounding steel. A fresh, sharp, uneven impression cutting through old oxidation is a red flag. Compare the mark with documented examples before paying collector money. There is another field test I use before I get excited about either of these categories. I turn the hammer in my hand and ask whether every part tells the same age story. Does the wood show wear where a working hand would grip it? Does the wedge look period correct? Is the eye irregular in a way that matches hand forging, or has somebody simply attacked a later head with a grinder? Are initials buried under old oxidation or sitting bright on top of it? On a presentation hammer, does the engraving style fit the claim date? Does the metal decoration show where fingers touched it? Is there paperwork, a box, a photograph, an old inventory tag, or any chain of ownership that supports the story? Collectors pay for evidence, not romance. That is especially important because a wonderful story can make an ordinary hammer sound priceless. I have heard this came from a shipyard, this belonged to a master silversmith, and this was made before the revolution more times than I can count. Sometimes the story is right. Sometimes it grew in the family over generations. I write the story down, but I separate it from what the object proves. And if you own an old hammer with initials or a date, do not scrape the area clean trying to make it easier to read. Use sidelight, magnification, photographs, and patience. The patina around a mark can help establish whether that mark belongs there. Once you polish everything bright, that evidence is gone. That is the mindset I want you carrying into the top three. Because from here forward, the mechanism, the trade, and the documented history matter more than how shiny the hammer looks. And those 13 clues can be worth more than the rust covering them. Number 3 is the rare patented hammer in exceptional condition. And this is where a strange mechanism can matter far more than the basic shape of the head. I am looking for readable patent language, low production models, unusual moving parts, and complete mechanisms that still work the way the inventor intended. One example to know is the Cheney nail holding system associated in the briefing with Arthur E. Taylor and a 1924 patent. Look for wording such as patent of 25/1924 and a mechanism designed to hold a nail while the user starts it. Another model worth learning is the Cheney number 777 adds. These are not automatically $1,000 hammers. Common patented examples may live around $150 to $200. The 4-figure potential appears in rare variants, prototypes, very low production forms, and examples in display level condition where the patent mechanism is complete and the markings are crisp. That distinction protects you from the biggest mistake in patented tool collecting, seeing petiti and assuming jackpot. A patent proves a design existed. It does not prove the surviving example is scarce. I search the exact date and number through Google Patents, compare the drawings to the hammer in my hand, and then ask how many similar examples actually appear in collections and sales. If the mechanism is missing a spring, bearing, stop, or special attachment, the value can drop sharply. Do not throw away a loose little part found in the same toolbox. It may belong to the patented feature. Number 2 is the elite European trade hammer, especially the kind of highly specialized carriage body or coach builder's hammer, sometimes described as a marteau de carrossier. Any of these tools can look bizarre to anybody who only knows claw hammers. You may see a square peen with sharp borders used for decorative or controlled metalwork, a flat wedge-like end associated with upholstery or bodywork, carefully finished faces, and an overall form designed for a very specific trade. Named European makers, fine finish, and rare specialized patterns raise the stakes. Ordinary trade hammers can remain in the hundreds, but the best named, finely made, scarce examples can push toward or into 4 figures. Again, the word European does not create value. The maker, exact trade, age, condition, and rarity do. I compare the head geometry with period catalogs and specialist references instead of inventing a purpose from the shape. A tool made for a coach builder, saddler, silversmith, or another elite trade can be valuable precisely because fewer people recognize what it was built to do. Number 1 is the hammer with documented historical, maritime, commemorative, or presentation provenance. This is the category where the story can become more valuable than the object itself, but only when the story is documented. A shipwright's hammer tied to a known vessel, a tool from a documented expedition, a presentation hammer from a public ceremony, a hammer connected to an exhibition, a famous owner, an important workshop, or a named shipyard can cross into 4 figures when collectors can prove the association. I want inscriptions, photographs, receipts, inventories, family papers, institutional records, or a reliable chain of ownership. My grandfather said is a clue, not documentation. If the hammer carries an engraved date and event, I try to verify that event. If it is said to come from a shipyard, I look for maker and ownership marks that fit the place and period. If it supposedly belonged to a historical figure, I want evidence stronger than a handwritten tag added last year. This is the ultimate multiplier because provenance creates a collecting audience beyond tools. Maritime collectors, industrial history collectors, local museums, and people interested in the specific person or event may all compete for the same object. That is how a hammer leaves the ordinary tool market and enters historical memorabilia. But it is also why this category attracts exaggerated stories. Never pay thousands for a story that cannot survive basic research. Now, let us put the whole video into a practical inspection routine you can use in a garage, estate sale, flea market, or inherited toolbox. First, turn the hammer over and inspect every face of the head. Look along both cheeks, around the eye, across the striking face, under the poll, and near any peen or claw. Use side lighting because shallow stamps disappear under oxidation. Do not attack the head with sandpaper to find the mark. Light photography and careful cleaning are safer. Second, look for the maker. D. Maydoll or D. Maydoll cast steel deserves attention, and Henry Cheney and Little Falls, New York, deserves attention. An Old Plum Anchor logo deserves attention. Stanley Sweetheart and Keen Cutter can also be useful clues, but remember the rule, maker alone does not set the price. A common leader hammer from a respected maker can still be worth only modest money. Third, search for patent information. Pat D, patented, a date, or a number can lead you into Google Patents. Search the wording exactly. Compare the patent drawing with the head, jaw, nail holder, or moving mechanism you actually have. Do not stop when you find a patent with a similar title. Confirm that the physical design matches. Fourth, decide the era from construction. A crude hand-forged head with an irregular eye, asymmetry, old hammering marks, and primitive geometry can point earlier. A clean machine-made grooved eye, standardized mass production shape, synthetic handle, or later hardware points newer. This is not an absolute dating system by itself, but it tells you which direction to research. Fifth, identify the trade. A plain claw hammer is common. A cooper's hammer may have a form adapted to barrel work. A cobbler's hammer can have a narrow polished face shaped for shoe work. A saddler's or upholsterer's tool may have specialized peens. A silversmith's planishing hammer has finely finished faces for controlled metal shaping. A coach builder's hammer may use unusual square or wedge-shaped peens for body and decorative work. The more specialized the form, the more important it becomes to identify the exact occupation before pricing. Sixth, inspect originality. Is the handle old hickory, and does its wear match the head? Is the wedge old? Is the eye untouched? Does the face show honest use without severe mushrooming? Are the maker marks readable? Is the old finish still present? A replaced handle may be perfectly fine for using the hammer, but collector value can suffer. Repainting is worse. Polishing can erase evidence. Welding can destroy confidence in structural originality. Seventh, check for fraud. Famous names can be stamped onto generic heads. Compare the typography, depth, spacing, and location of the stamp with documented examples. A fresh stamp slicing through dark patina should make you suspicious, so should lettering that looks crooked or inconsistent with the maker's known marks. Artificial aging around a new stamp is possible too, which is why you compare the entire tool, not one area. The wood, wedge, eye, face wear, corrosion, and mark all need to tell one coherent story. Eighth, separate condition problems from honest age. Light surface rust can be acceptable. In deep pitting that eats through a maker mark is permanent loss. A mushroom striking face tells you the head has deformed, yet a crack around the eye can make the tool unsafe and less collectible. A loose head, glued split, crude weld, broken peen, or replaced section all matter. Do not hide these problems when you sell. Ninth, do not restore a possible collector hammer until you know what it is. This point is important enough to repeat because it is the opposite of the cast iron skillet world. With cookware, careful restoration can often increase usability and presentation. With collectible hammers, originality can be the value. Do not sand away forge marks. Do not polish the steel like chrome. Do not spray black paint over old finish. Do not replace a worn but original hickory handle merely because a new one looks cleaner. Photograph first, research second, preserve third. If the tool turns out to be a common user, you can make different choices later. 10th, research the market properly. On eBay, Use completed listings and the sold filter. Search the exact maker, trade, model, and patent where possible. A generic antique hammer search is nearly useless because it mixes $5 users with museum-level objects. Search D. Madel hammer, Henry Cheney patented hammer, plumb anchor hammer, silversmith planishing hammer, presentation hammer, or the exact patent date. Then compare condition and originality. Asking prices are not evidence of what buyers actually paid. For deeper identification, use the Bob Kone Toolmark database and consult Edward H. Shade's A Study of Hammers for Rare Types and Forms. And if you think you have a signed pre-1800 forging, a silver or presentation hammer, a rare prototype, or a historically documented piece, contact a specialist antique tool dealer or auction house before selling. That is the point where a general flea market price guide stops being enough. And here is the calibration I want you to remember after every dramatic example in this video. Most old hammers are worth somewhere between $500 and $200. Thousands are the exception. Even names like Madel, Cheney, and Plum usually live in the hundreds unless the exact model, era, rarity, patent, condition, or provenance pushes the piece into a different league. A rusty hammer with a famous stamp is not a retirement plan. A common hammer with a great family story is still a common hammer unless the story can be documented. The categories that can cross into thousands are the outliers. Signed and dated pre-1800 hand-forged pieces, precious metal or presentation hammers, extremely rare patented models or prototypes in exceptional condition, elite name European trade tools, and historically documented hammers with desirable provenance. Values also move with the market. Auction results, reference books, and sold listings give you evidence, not guarantees. That honesty is what keeps you from overpaying. So tonight, open the old toolbox and make two piles. In the first pile, put the modern fiberglass claw hammer, the anonymous ball peen, the common post-war branded user, the damaged repaired hammer, and the shiny over-restored piece. In the second pile, put anything hand-forged and primitive, anything with engraving or precious metal details, anything with a patent mechanism, anything with a bizarre specialized trade shape, and anything carrying documentation or a historical inscription. Then inspect that second pile slowly. Which one would make your heart beat fastest? A signed 18th century forging, a Cheney patent nobody recognizes, a silver presentation hammer, or a shipwright's tool with real papers connecting it to a vessel? Tell me below. The lesson is not that rusty hammers are secretly worth thousands. The lesson is that almost all of them are not, and knowing the rare exceptions is exactly what keeps you from throwing away the one that is.